Hey, welcome back to the TheEZGZ garage. Today we're going to yank out the transmission on the tub buggy. We did a test drive yesterday, found the second gear not working real good, so we're going to swap out the transmission for a different one that we worked on. And that was one of the original reasons that I built this car. And it's not my first one, it's the second one. This is sort of like a portable engine dyno and test vehicle. It's just a lot more accessible to get to things and for break-in choices and just testing things, as well as having just an enjoyable time, having fun out in the open air, having a little convertible. So that's what this is all about for me, and it's all about helping other folks so they don't have to go through the same struggles that I did. Now, I know there's a lot of younger viewers that are interested in Volkswagens and maybe aren't even old enough to drive. Well, you need to go to some swap meets and flea markets and places like that car guys gather, and keep your eyes open and look around. Now, there's all kinds of books out there. This is one of my favorite books, and it didn't give me the detailed information, but it gave me some breakdown views of transmission parts, because when you start taking things apart, you will find, let me see, just, pictures like this, how it's laid out, where does that seal go, where does that shim go. It gives you diagrams and exploded views of all this stuff. See, it doesn't tell you how to rebuild the transmission, but it gives a view of this stuff. So as you're getting things apart and your memory starts bothering you, then there's other books, and this is a book, I don't even know where that thing came from. Shop towels. These blue ones are going to work better than regular paper towels. Here's another old worn out book. A lot of times when you buy a car, they'll have a couple books in them, especially that one for the complete idiot. I always frowned on these climber books. I didn't think they were too good, and there's other better books for just downright engine building, but sometimes there's helpful information and pictures in these things. So if they're cheap, just pick them up wherever you can. And don't forget the library. You don't have to spend any money if you got a project. This Bentley book here, cover's missing. I didn't buy any of this stuff new. It was either given to me or in vehicles. And you can still buy them. They're still available, but they're like $100 a pop. But what I did in these books, because I didn't want to smudge up the pages and handle them so much, is I made a notebook, a 3-ring binder, and I've been putting different things of interest to me, how to test coils, torque specifications, my tachometer hookup. This is the different parts that you get. If you get a shift fork jig, you get these different types of things. And these are just the page protectors. You buy a box of 50 or 100 at Office Depot or something, and you just go ahead and make copies of this stuff. Nowadays, you guys, I've had this for years and years and years, and I must confess, I just kind of took it to work when I was working on a weekend, and I made some copies with the copy machine. And this is because I'm flip-flopping through this stuff. And now this is about bus transmissions, but the insides of the transmissions are basically the same with all modern transmissions. And here I've highlighted some things that I wanted to know. There's some interesting details that you just need to know as a quick reference. And I've got this book open a lot, and you can see where I've highlighted different things in blue there that were important to me. And so yeah, keep that in mind, and it's something that you want to do just as you're working in the garage. Now, for this transmission project that we're going to be working on, if you've never done this before and you're planning on doing it and you need to do it, first thing I want you to do is disconnect the battery. That's the very first thing I want you to do. Disconnect the battery, and while you're under the back seat disconnecting that battery, I want you to take that little cover off the tunnel hump and undo that shift coupler. It's something that I forget to do real often, and I'll be back here yanking on that transmission, trying to pull it out, and it won't come. And here, I got a hold of that shift coupler. And that grub screw that goes in there, you have to take it all the way out. Don't just loosen it. It'll move around a little bit if you just loosen it, but you need to take it all the way out because there's an indentation in the shaft. You'll see it when I take it apart. And don't lose that screw. If you can move the shifter and get it back out of the way and put the screw right back in the same hole, finger tight, and this is something that you need to establish as kind of a habit. I'm going to talk to you like you haven't worked on cars. I know there's a lot of great friends out there that subscribe to my channel and watch my stuff, and they've been wrenching for years and they got all this stuff down pat. But there's a lot of younger folks that haven't had to work on cars. I mean, they make cars so much better now than they used to back in the day. So we got to teach these guys how to do this sort of stuff. If you're, don't be afraid to use little sandwich bags, and if you have washers and bolts and screws, especially if they look odd, put them in a bag and take a little magic marker and write on the outside of them. Okay, so the next thing, what do you want to do? You've disconnected the battery under the shift coupler. The next thing you need to do is crawl underneath the car and pinch off that gas line. Here you can see I've taken a pair of vice grips and I've just pinched the rubber line and set it off to the side here. You want to be careful of that fuel. Then what I want you to do is to disconnect this throttle cable. This is another thing that's easy to forget. You go to drop in the engine and you're pulling back on the thing and you're looking all over and feeling all over, and here you got your throttle cable hanging on for dear life. So that's another thing. Now this little device in the center here that it pivots on, it might be a good idea to take that out and put it in a bag and set it aside. And you never know when you're going to get interrupted and can't get back to a project. And try to have a comfortable, clean work area. Even if you have to work outside, you can buy a tarp at Harbor Freight or any number of places, Home Depot, for pretty cheap. Take a tarp if you're outside in the dirt and lay it underneath the car, and that way if any little washers or screws or bolts drop, and plus when you're laying down there on your back, you always got to pray on Volkswagens. You got to get on your hands and knees and you're going to have to get underneath there. If you're got to lift the car up in the air to do any work, use some jack stands or something really, really, really solid. Don't just stick it up on some squirrely little scissor jack and crawl underneath there. Be safe all the time. Be safe. Think about being safe. You want to survive to drive this thing after you get it all finished. But for right now, we're just going to worry about taking it apart. So hopefully you've got a set of metric wrenches, and even if you don't have sockets, you can do this job. It's a little bit more tedious, but you can do it. And another thing about being comfortable, you need to be focused when you're doing this. You got to be in the right state of mind. You can't have distractions. Tell your mom or whoever that hold your phone calls, or if you got a cell phone, maybe just set it off to the side. You'll survive. You can live without it. Just stay focused on what you're doing, because you're going to have to remember how to put all these little pieces back together, and it's sometimes okay to do it in the exact reverse order. So you need to stay focused while you're thinking about that. And if it's hot, summertime, 100 degrees out, make yourself some shade. Again, get a separate tarp, and you can get some like half-inch electrical conduit. Works great. I wonder if I've got one of those poles right here. I can show you. Here's one right here. This is what I used to do, and I take this sometimes when I go camping. I'm going to just show you. You just get some of this half-inch conduit, and see how I put a coupling on the end of that. And I put a, looks to me like a 9/16 or 3/8, looks to me like a 3/8 bolt. Somehow it must have just fit in there, and that way I can use a nut and a washer. You put that through the eyelet, and then you put the nut and washer over the tarp to hold it in place, and get you a bungee cord and stretch it to the ground. Use some paracord. You can use that when you're camping. It's good to have in your survival stuff anyhow. And if you can have a few of those, you can attach them to your car by the gutters and drain rails. There's any number of ways, but try to get you some shade. You'll feel better. You'll be able to do a better job, and you'll be more comfortable while you're working on it too. So what else can I tell you? Well, you know what? I'm just going to crawl underneath there. I've done a little straightening up here, and I had myself some lunch, so I've got a window of time planned. We're going to yank this transmission out.
I forgot all about mentioning, mark your wires. Use your camera, use your phone, take some pictures, mark each wire some way that you know so that you can put it back where it came, and you'll be okay.
Tight fit. That's probably 300 pounds dressed out like that, so you want to be careful and be safe. Have somebody there to help or watch if you need to. Let's keep going.
Okay, here we're down under. I got the starting motor off and set back to the side. I've got a little Torx bit in this socket, and we're going to loosen up the CV joints. That's what we're working on here.
Not much room in here. I want to thank all my subscribers and folks who comment and view my channel. I really appreciate the interaction that we all get, and just wanted to say that. I'm not totally against using power tools, but sometimes guess it'd help if you could see them, huh? Oh boy. Everything takes so much longer when you're trying to do it on camera. I need myself a sexy little camera girl who will work for food. I never see them people standing on the corner, you know, cute young girls. It's always some old grizzly looking guy. Okay, it looks like time to yank that puppy out of here. Alrighty. Hopefully I can do this without bleeding.
Fortunately for me, I have an extra floor jack, and what I've done is support that front part, so when I pull it off the coupler on that front motor mount, it doesn't just fall. It's a good idea to buy some of these tools, and you'll keep them your whole life.
Thank you, Creeper. Jeepers Creepers. Alright. So, that looks good. Now, that's why I like an IRS transmission, because you don't have all the axles and brakes to deal with. Now, you can see this weird looking strand on a Manx style buggy, the standard short versions. The clutch cable's too long, so what I do on mine, I should just cut that loose stuff off, but you take two of these U-bolts and you cut your line. This is one way of doing it. That's worked for me for years. And you can see I've got all kinds of extra bracing in here. This is solid mount front, but I use a stock heavy duty rubber on the front nose cone, and I'll show you why here in just a second. I've got lateral supports this way to support the frame horns for impacts, because things are going to move. When things move suddenly, that's when you start breaking CV joints and other sort of parts. Now, you can see this piece of 2x2 here. This goes full length. I've added a brace that comes off the original casting and is supported by the shock mount. Continues on up. Got my regulator mounted on there. And then I've got like a panhard bar that goes from the back side of this as well and goes down there to the original body bolt. And that gives lateral support for my framework. So I've supported my framework as well as come down with 2 of these side supports, and then using the solid mount here with a standard motor mount bolt attachment point right here. And this has worked for me for 15 years or more in this car without a hitch. And so just kind of looking things over as I describe it to you. Oh, I'll show you why I use a rubber nose cone, and it kind of got me into trouble on this build. Alright, one of the many delays on that close ratio transmission, I had it all buttoned up, ready to go. I kept putting this nose cone on, and 2 things were happening. The transmission main shaft suddenly became very difficult to turn, and secondly, I wasn't using a very thick gasket. I put the standard thicker brown gasket that comes in the package in there, and it gave it a little bit of space. This little section here where my finger is captures the bearing on the back of the main shaft. So now there's a difference. This is a 2-bolt nose cone, and this is the later style 3-bolt nose cone. This is a where your reverse switch goes for your backup lights, and this is stronger. We used to break less of these in the sand dunes. This is what was supporting our car, and the engine and transmission a little bit beefier. Now, if you look close on this one, I didn't notice this until the very end. See the 2 cracks? There's one about 3 o'clock on the lower hole, and then there's one about 8 or 9 o'clock on the upper hole on the left there. So I just saw that as I was putting together, and I thought, well, that's no good. I don't want that puppy breaking. And this is kind of the fractures and things you have when you do the off-roading and you use those solid mounts that everybody puts in and thinks that they gotta have. Actually, I think for torque and side to side when you're dropping the clutch and hitting bumps in your engine, I think the one in the back is good. And your frame horns that were originally designed, they were meant to flex a little bit, and it was to isolate the engine and transmission so the sound didn't go into the framework of the vehicle, but it also kind of for sudden moves and knocks and things that you hit. And if you started off-roading, things will bend and shift. And I don't know if you'll remember this in the Baja, that thing had been jumped and abused so badly that the left IRS axle bearings in the housing were broken. The right frame horn was about 2.5, 3 inches lower on the right, and I bent it back cold. I made a video on that if you look in the Baja series. I bent that back up, and then I did some bracing on that. And what else did we do? Well, just some little trivia I'm throwing in there. There will be a little gold nuggets sprinkled throughout my videos as they come to mind, and that's just how this old mind works. So be careful and be safe, and let's get this other transmission in there. The sun's shining. Maybe we can get a putt in today, huh? Probably not the best camera angle, but it's even worse from the other side. I got the engine in the way. So out with the old, in with the new. Get this stuff over here out of our way. When it finds its happy spot, it just seems to sort of fit. You know what I mean? Oh. Whew. Yeah. Whew. All right. Break time. Yeah. Ugh. Battery's getting low anyhow. I need to plug you into the charger while I take a little pee break. Okay, just about ready to wrap things up here, and I noticed that I didn't have a throwout bearing on here. Now, on that other transmission that we were just running, that was an old throwout bearing. I took it out. I remember that whole thing. I even made a video on it, but I just saved stuff. I need to get in the habit of tagging it and marking it. Now, so I'm going to show you a little trick that I learned. Sometimes these older ones can be aggravated. You got two styles here, and a little trick that I learned. Actually, you could do it a little bit higher. Boy, these springs are tough. Yeah. Okay. I've got a socket, a 13 millimeter socket, and I've put it between the transmission wall to move the fork forward and overcome that spring. Now, you take your, make sure, just run it with your fingers. Make sure that it feels smooth. That other one was probably rough, and I would have felt it when I put it in there and remembered that whole story. Oh, well, we'll see. We'll see. I might be full of shit. I usually am. Okay, so usually it's pretty easy to get one side on there. You can put it in the bearing, put it in the saddle, and then run your clip around behind. And they have these, they look like, they're coiled up like diaper pins. They call them the high performance ones or something. But you know what? These stalkers, if you have your clutch adjusted properly, these will work just fine. It is spring steel, and they can bite you, and they can aggravate you putting them in. And since I pushed the R button, that'll probably be the case. I can see it back there. It is to not lose its spring. Okay. There's a groove that it's got to fit in the back. On both sides, you should be able to grab it with your fingers, and it shouldn't come off. Okay? It should not come off. It's the space, the notch in the fork is deep enough so that if you just have this backed off from your pressure plate, adjusted correctly, where your pedal's just the right height, then this won't have enough slack to jump out of there. They used them for decades. Millions of them were done that way. And then they came out with a new one, which is an upgraded version. And, you know, that was one of the things about Volkswagen. They didn't just keep making crap. They upgraded it as time went on. Then don't forget to take your socket out and just release that. If you try to do it with its back in here, it might be a... Try it. Whatever works for you. I'm just showing you a little trick that worked for me. And let's go ahead and plug this motor in. Yeah. We might get a ride yet. The sun's still shining. Days are longer. Let's, can you see what's going on there? Maybe not. We'll take the old 2110 and that was kind of fun. It has a little deeper, rougher tone than some of my other engines. This is a tight fit, even though it is, it's just well engineered. You know, after you've had a few of these, you think about all of these little problems when you're designing and making things. You know, a lot of these Manx buggies have all kinds of wires draped around in the back, and things are getting caught. You can't see and you can't feel, and it just aggravates the hell out of you. And have to spend all day undoing those back bumpers. You know, the back cages that so many guys run and they sell. I just I don't run one. I don't see the sense for it. I don't see the use for it. I don't drive in those kinds of conditions. Now, what I do is I use my head here. I just kind of keep the flywheel parallel. And I try to bring it up, and I don't want to catch that main shaft, the stub, on my clutch. There, as soon as you get it in the hole. Okay, now you still want to get it level. It's so much easier when you have help. Okay. Man. Now, sometimes it's good to have it in gear because sometimes the splines don't line up. In this case, it did! First time. How about that? We're living large. Maybe I better go buy myself a lotto. Oh yeah, that baby's home. Now this is the only place I know of on a Volkswagen where they don't use flat washers or spring washers. They just put the nut in. And I have a tendency to do the same thing. You can use, if you want to buy a 12mm spring washer. You know, a lot of times guys call nuts and bolts by the wrong size. They call them by the size of a wrench. They'd say, well, that's a 17mm bolt. They go in the hardware store and the guy takes a 17. Oh no, that's way too big. Well, that's what you ask for, and it's like, yeah, the guy at the hardware store is correct. It's a 12mm bolt that takes a 17mm wrench on the head.
Don't forget to adjust your clutch cable the best you can, and make sure you have it neutral.
You didn't really think I'd leave you behind, did ya? Well, I'm gonna go get some gas. Sounds pretty good. I'm telling you, I'm very happy. That one little bearing was making that thing howl. Boy, you wouldn't have believed how that thing howled. It was worse than asking a 60-year-old lady if she wanted to go Dutch treat at Dairy Queen. That's how bad it used to howl. Oh yeah. Well, it kind of takes away some of the hurt of the other one, you know. But we'll get into it and figure out what's wrong and stay on the program here. Up here, and I'm in a bad spot, so I'm gonna have to turn you off. I didn't get you turned off very good. Yeah, the Harleys are out today. Been a long winter.